Hello and welcome back again. This is James Nussbaumer, author of The Master of Everything, a story of mankind in the world of illusion we call life. Now we're going to shift into chapter 24, and it's titled Understanding the Light. The Holy Spirit will guide you in your desired direction if you allow him to. He will guide you to where your free will waits for you, even if he must use someone else's body in communicating certain messages to you. His concern is your free will, which is God's will. It is impossible for you to achieve anything truly desired other than this. Why? Because what is not of your true free will has never even been created by God, nor will it ever be. This is why you never are at peace or have joy unless it's through your own true free will. When you are involved in doing whatever it is you love, with pure joy and with ease, and without a single ounce of stress or uncertainty, this is your natural state of grace. Beware, however, that the world may not want you to proceed in the direction of your heart, the way your heart is urging you toward, and not wanting to lose their acceptance. You may take an unwanted path. For example, I spent 25 years in an industry that did a good job of convincing me that this was where I belonged. Keep in mind that your free will is not only about your chosen career path, it is about anything at all you participate in. In other words, it's about how you live your life moment to moment. But when my own inner self tried to argue against the flattery of others, my ego-based thoughts always reminded me of the bills to pay, the deadlines and commitments, and the pressures of keeping up with the Joneses, I guess you could say. The world convinced me of the rules that dictate we do what we must do, and then we take some well-earned time off to reward ourselves with whatever we really love to do. This is how life works, so the ego convinced me, and that anything desirable was located somewhere, again, somewhere out there, outside of ourselves. Am I blaming the world? No, not at all. But this belief we choose to make out of fear makes it impossible for any of us to operate from a true state of grace. Many of us don't understand what grace really is. Until I began to open myself to right-mindedness, I always seemed to be looking out there for what might make me whole or feel complete. We all have our natural state of grace, and there is no reason to hide a single thing about who we truly are. When you are in your true state of grace, you will discover that you don't need what the world dictates. This is where I'd like you to answer a question within yourself, and you don't have to share it with anyone. Please do so honestly, without leaning toward what the world would prefer that you say. What else could you desire but the truth about yourself? The real truth. Your answer to this question is your true free will, and you share it with your Creator. This is the you that is the kingdom. In answering this question, you come to remember God. This is where you are at one with God's mind, and his idea of you does not ask for what the world teaches. We all have our inner state of grace, and we must share it or extend it. But this does not mean that you should go around town telling people throughout your day, the grace of God is with me, nor does it give you the right to dictate what others should do. When you know it enough in yourself, others will pick up on your radiance, and they may or may not get the message. The Holy Spirit will speak through you by your example, as well as through the examples of others, depending on the level of readiness of those involved. The Holy Spirit will use time, and at the appropriate moment, he will know what to show or offer. Messages will be given and received based on the level of readiness for that particular situation. This is how we extend ourselves. I remember a business relationship I had with a small technology company that was experiencing tremendous growth. I had given the small firm a financial planning presentation, as my goal was, of course, to obtain the company as a new client. I would advise them on investment decisions to accelerate the company's portfolio, as well as the individuals' personal portfolios. It was a good size account for me, and my efforts did pay off. Yes, they signed on. The company president, Bart, whom I had known for a few years, was in the same golf league as I was. Bart pulled me aside one day while I was gathering a census at the company's main office, which I needed to prepare my data. He saw that I was busy, but asked that I step into his office for a moment. He seriously asked if he could ask me a personal question. I said to Bart, of course. He hesitated, then proceeded, and he said, Jim, without offending you, what are you doing in the financial services business? He continued that he and his partner respected my knowledge and expertise, but they both felt I belonged somewhere else. He assured me they were sticking by me in our business arrangement, but also wanted me to be aware that one of the reasons they went with me was that they understood. Well, let me say I was baffled, and I wondered, what is it that they understand? I never did ask, and neither of them volunteered to go any deeper on the subject. I simply nodded my head in agreement and went back to what I'd been doing. It wouldn't be until much later that I would realize what he meant. When we extend our grace, or radiant light, you could say, we're simply extending that light over any darkness that remains, along with the light of others, which is the same light. This is so because of his source, God's source, the Holy Spirit's source, or God. It's all the same because it's all one light. But you cannot think about this in order for it to happen. Just as the opera singer releases her high note, it is effortless. It's effortless because your true light is who you are. The others who live in their true light alongside you actually connect, and from one light, which is accepted and understood. One light with a capital L, light, is all there is. Those who live in darkness will cover their eyes to you because initially they are suspicious and fearful. This is only because these individuals are not on the same healing or readiness level. Nevertheless, they are still at one with you. It is only that their light is obscured at some level for the time being, a little more than yours. But don't allow this to get in your way while the radiance that you are radiates, because your radiance, or your luminosity, we could say, is surely intended to help shine through their obscurity. You receive radiance from others this way as well. Those who can glimpse your light will gradually begin to see their own light, which will gradually touch yours and connect to it. You also found or realized your own light through the influences of someone else, whether you are aware of it or not. No one likes to step out of the dark and abruptly into bright light. By coming to an understanding of this concept of light gradually, you are doing your part in the atonement. You are both giving and receiving. If you recognize the light of another, you will also be acknowledging your own light. Nothing is easier than recognizing truth with a capital T. If you are not operating from truth, you may temporarily fool others, but you will know this, and I'm sorry to say, so will other true radiant individuals who will see that you are lost. If this is the case that you are not seeing truth, you will not be able to see or hear the Holy Spirit's guidance or recognize his voice through others. He can only guide the truthful. But don't be too hard on yourself if you do realize that you have not been honest with yourself and that you have not been living from your state of grace. Because, and listen closely, the very fact that you recognize this is truth in itself. And this recognition is the beginning of the undoing process by the Holy Spirit. So be glad. This is your knowledge now, and the Holy Spirit led you to it. Therefore, be real with yourself by accepting this knowledge as your first step of leaving the dark. The obscurity then starts to lift. Now you have the knowledge to move forward, as I did, and as slowly as you need to, and understand you are moving in the right direction, or we can say a right-minded direction. But also understand that slowly is an illusion, because there is no such thing as time in regards to slow or fast in oneness or wholeness, because oneness and wholeness have no conflict, have no opposites. Therefore, you may want to ease up on yourself. Accept the fact that this hold of the ego has been a difficult release, especially with no support from the outside world. And go ahead and give yourself some credit as you give the Holy Spirit a little smile. Let him know you now understand. By this point in this book, you should now be knowing the feeling of truth. But if you have questions or reservations about whether or not you know for sure or have a doubt about a particular situation or circumstance, you can be sure that your doubts are due to the ego flexing its muscles for defense. Also keep in mind that your doubts or questions spring from the environment you were born into. But these doubts are nothing that your spiritual flashlight cannot handle. Therefore, shine it directly on those feelings of doubt and get a good look at them for what they really are. But remember, don't judge them, just look at them. Look at the feelings. Allow your feelings of doubts to approach the light, and as these feelings approach the light, they will fade away. Once again, remember to use your spiritual flashlight without being emotional and simply be done with it by moving on. You will be truthful with yourself when you realize that you are healing another mind when that person recognizes your own radiance. And you are being healed as well when you recognize the radiance in others. We were created as a wholeness we are not even aware of. This healing within the sonship is acknowledgement of our power to co-create with God. What else could we call this healing light, with a capital L again, other than the power of our creation? Jesus tells us through the Course, through A Course of Miracles, Jesus tells us, only the whole sonship is worthy to be co-creator with God, because only the whole sonship can create like him. Here in prison, I recently received a letter from Bart, the president of the technology company. Through modern technology, he was able to research the facts about my incarceration. He wanted to let me know how sorry he was to hear about my problem, and he informed me that he had always looked up to me. His letter was deeply encouraging, and believe me when I say that receiving a letter of this fine magnitude while behind bars is a tremendously uplifting deal. The letter also arrived during a dark time when I was able to see his light, the light from Bart, faded away some of my darkness, just in that handwritten letter from him. Bart went on to say how he'd sold his share of the company to his partner and no longer had any dealings within the business. And without any regrets, he said. Bart sold his home as well and moved to Florida, where he purchased an old, run-down golf course. He tells me he has fixed up the old course and is having the time of his life. He has invited me to play his updated golf course on him as often as I would like once I am released from prison. Now I realize what Bart meant a few years ago, that day in his office, when he told me that he understood. Thank you again, everyone. And now in the next session, we will move on to chapter 25.